the Indian Air Force versus Netflix. Now, the Air Force has tweeted out an objection to a Netflix movie where Anil Kapoor is the star. The Indian Air Force has opposed the IAF uniform being worn by Anil Kapoor and to the language that he uses. Mr. Kapoor has tweeted out an apology video, but the larger question remains. In this Air Force versus Anil Kapoor, should our forces be guardians of how they are depicted in films? This is the second time it's happened. It's happened earlier in the case of the film Gunjan Saxena, The Kargil Girl. First, let's bring you that that tweet by the Air Force and what they found offensive. So you've got that on your screen. The Indian Air Force uniform in the video is inaccurately shown, and the language used is inappropriate. This does not conform to the behavioral norms of those in the armed forces of India. The related scenes need to be withdrawn, is what the Air Force had to say. Now, this created a storm on Twitter, and Anil Kapoor, the lead actor in this film called AK versus AK, had this to say.
It has come to my attention that the trailer of my new film, AK versus AK, has offended some people, as I'm wearing the Indian Air Force uniform while using unparliamentary language. I would like to sincerely offer my humble apologies for unintentionally hurting anyone's sentiments. I just like to supply some context to hopefully help you understand how things came to be this way. My character in the film is in uniform because he's an actor playing the role of an officer when he finds out that his daughter has been kidnapped. The anger and rage he experiences and portrays is that of an emotionally distraught father. It was only in the interest of remaining true to the story that my character is still wearing the uniform on his quest to find his missing daughter. It was never my intent or the intent of the filmmakers to disrespect the Indian Air Force.
All right, so Anil Kapoor apologizing over there, but explaining the context of the film. Well, joining us now, Dilip Tahil, the actor, Geeta Bhatt joins us as well. And we're also joined by Mayank Tiwari, the Bollywood writer. I'd like to thank all of you for being with us. Mayank, let me come to you first. Anil Kapoor apologizing over there, but in the larger context of what you as a filmmaker can say or cannot say, is it a bit of a concern that actors would, in this environment, require to say, look, I'm sorry for what I said? Perhaps they meant what they said, but now in this environment, they need to say sorry for it. Does that work for you as a filmmaker?
Yeah, it is very sad because, the outrage has come from the official handle of the Indian Air Force, and the way it's worded, it's also very clear that it's almost like an order. So it is quite shocking, to see, because it's a very exciting film, and, after a long time, such an exciting anticipated film has come out, which has a mockumentary style, and it's eagerly waited. And this kind of a controversy unnecessarily brings, shows it in a wrong light, because this outrage which people are feeling over some expression is, I think we need to develop a more thicker skin as a society, because this is not going to work. People are going to tell stories. So forcing actors or forcing producers who have finally finished their product and are going to be out with it to apologize is, I don't know if this is the right precedent, we would like to have. That's what my personal opinion is.
Okay. Geeta Bhatt, fourth largest air force in the world, nuclear capable, fighting potentially a two-front scenario, China and Pakistan. Should this air force with such a proud heritage be worried about what a filmmaker does in a film?
Well, Vishnuji, as you rightly said, we are the fourth largest in the world Air Force, and Indian Air Force is, they are definitely our pride, and they are our protectors in the sky, and they have, undertaken some of the most perilous operations to safeguard this nation. Now, when such a organization, when they felt offended because the uniform that the character, which the actor is portraying, their objection is that it has not been, the uniform that is being worn is improper, and also that there is foul language which is being used. Now, we all know that our armed forces take a lot of pride in portraying officer-like qualities, and that is how, even there are people who want to go to NDA and join the armed forces. So this is something which they take pride on. Now, when there are, there are cases where there have been movies like, I think a couple of years back, there was a movie on Indira Gandhi, and we saw political parties coming out and objecting and not letting them being played in theatre because they felt it is not,
That's
not
very
being
unfortunate.
depicted properly. And that there's very similar such situations that have happened. So I think they are, in full right.
No, ma'am, everybody has their right to
idea.
protest. But everybody has their right to protest. But I'm just trying to understand whether the armed forces need to be guardians of how they're depicted in films.
Well, they do have the
Particularly
right
if it's
to,
a story, it's not a documentary. It's not a fact-based thing.
You see, if it is, we also need to understand, Vishnuji, that there are, our young, citizens of this country who in future are going to be part of our armed forces. The kind of, example that is set in front of them when they see movies where there is an inappropriate projection of the armed forces, then I think the organizations they do have a right to put forth how they feel that they are being projected.
All right, let me just take that across to Dilip Tahil. Is that something that concerns you, that when you make a film, you need to be worried about how the next generation sees it?
Well, a very good evening to you, and lovely to be in this conversation with you. I really feel that, the films need to be accurate as to how they depict anyone. I mean, it could be the armed forces, it could be the police. If you get the uniform wrong of the armed forces, I think that is completely sloppy. It is incredible in terms of the character. You have to get these things right. And I completely agree with the Air Force or the Army when they say they are custodians of their image. After all, this influences people's thinking. It has an impact on how people consider the armed forces or any force, the police and the custodians of this country in a certain way. And for them to be depicted in this manner, no, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a documentary or not. It is a depiction which is in front of the public, and it is a public perception that needs to be dealt with in an accurate manner. I do not think that anyone in the armed forces would speak that kind of language in uniform or out of uniform. Having said that, Anil has apologized for it. Obviously, there's been an oversight.
So I'm sorry, sir, people in uniform don't curse. Is that what you're suggesting?
They've overlooked the fact that he's doing this. No, I'm not suggesting that. Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say that. I said that it is not. No, I didn't. I said it's not in keeping. It is not in keeping with the standards of the armed forces. I do not believe that they would speak in that manner. But I think that Anil has apologized for that. So obviously there's been an oversight. And I do believe that the armed forces, the Air Force or the Army, have every right to point out a depiction of themselves. I think it is very, very important that the films and other people depict people accurately.
All right. So therefore, Mayank, would you now need to ensure when you write your next film that you are depicting people accurately so as not to hurt somebody's sensitivities? I mean, how do you feel about that?
One doesn't even know how to react. There is an actor who, in the context of the trailer, is very clear. He's an actor. He's not even playing an officer of the Indian Air Force, And the level of outrage. I mean, I'm listening to Mr. Tahil. I'm quite worried actually, because artists are not interested in insulting someone or disrespecting someone when one is trying to make a story. One is trying to stay authentic to what one is trying to say. And in order to do that, one does what one has to do. Air Force, some section of people have the right to be outraged. They have the right to say that this is not right. But, to say that something should not be done, take it out, remove it, this kind of, disciplinary tone it does not augur well for anyone. It does not augur well for anyone. And I feel that we have such a,
no, I would like to, sorry, can I interject there? Mr. Tiwari, I mean, Mr. Tiwari, when you are doing a character or you're showing the armed forces or anyone, you need to do some research, get some accuracy. You cannot get the uniform wrong. That apart from
not a story on the armed forces.
Even as an actor, if I was playing an Air Force officer, I would first check and see if the uniform was right.
We have not seen the film and we do not know what is the context of the uniform as
No,
of
I mean, besides seeing the
It is
film or
very
not,
clear.
you commented that the actors just must come and do what they do. That's absolutely wrong. This just shows the callous attitude of a lack of research, a lack of responsibility,
So it's
and
not
just
about
taking
the Air Force
liberties
and
because you
research,
think it's a
story.
film.
In fact, at this stage,
cannot
let
take so many
me just say
liberties.
what Netflix has to say, because they've explained it. Let's play out that quote from Netflix. Let's have that up full frame for a moment, because there was an explanation from them as well. Our intention, the Honorable Air Force, our intention would never be to disrespect the armed forces of India in any regard. AK versus AK is a film in which Anil Kapoor and his co-stars are playing themselves as actors. At no point does the film represent the Indian Air Force or our armed forces. We have nothing but the highest respect for the brave people protecting the nation. Geeta Bhatt, what's wrong with that as an explanation?
Well, they have, the Netflix has put forth their side of the story. I mean, I have not watched what is there in it, but what I wish to say over here is that if our, of our protectors, if our armed forces, if they have put forth an observation, if they have put forth an objection, then it is important that we need to respect it. And the actor concerned has, duly obliged and has come out with an apology.
All right. Mayank, is that, again, just from where I started out, is that something that works for you? That a film is made and then an actor has to come out and say, look, I'm sorry, because you're under pressure from those who feel that they've been insulted in a film which is a story and not a documentary, not a real life event, which no one has seen so far, but still feel it needs to be objected to.
I feel it's not right. It's not fair on the artists. It's not fair on the producers or on the directors too. It's almost like putting a gun to their heads and making them like say things. I don't know. This is not the way things should be. And the whole idea of getting somebody to apologize, somebody to come out and say we did not mean any disrespect. It shows the kind of sensitivity. We have become oversensitized toward these things, which are actually non-issues. There are so many important things that are going on, and depiction of a uniform or the kind of language a character is speaking in a trailer. If these are things that are becoming so important for an organization as important and as prominent as the Indian Air Force, then one doesn't know really what's in store for the future. It's a scary prospect.
All right, I'd like to thank you both very much for joining us. Just a reminder of a little bit of the context over here. Just last month, the government issued an order bringing online news portals and content providers, which includes Netflix, Amazon Prime Video and Hotstar, under the Information and Broadcasting Ministry. Until the month prior to that, there was no law or autonomous body governing digital content. So the question is, will the freedom which filmmakers presently enjoy, will that legally be taken away from them? At the moment, that's not been enforced, but legally, will that be taken away from them sooner than not on streaming content? I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. It's time for this short break.